later today.
Graham Morris. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Prime Minister for his answer, but I think we should also congratulate Team GB on its tremendous success at the recent Winter Olympics. Mr. Speaker, this week HSBC announced staff bonuses of £2.3 billion and a 140% pay rise to its chief executive. When ordinary British families face a cost of living crisis and too many young people languish on the dole, isn't it time for this government to listen to Labour and tax bank bonuses to get our young people back to work?
Well, first of all, let me join the honourable gentleman in congratulating Team GB for the best medal performance since 1924 at a Winter Games. It was a huge honour to welcome them to Downing Street, where I had an explanation of the tasks of skeleton bobsleighing and indeed curling, but I think our congratulations go to everyone involved and all those who helped to train them. On the issue of bank bonuses, they are well down from the appalling situation that was left by the last Labour government. But what we need to see is the proper control of all forms of pay and bonuses. What I don't want to see, and what I think we'd get from the party opposite, is focusing only on bonuses, because of course you can claw back a bonus, you can't claw back pay. And we don't want to go back to the days of Fred Goodwin, where you could be paid well for an appalling performance.
Does the Prime Minister recognise that it's part of the job of church leaders to challenge governments about poverty? But will he discuss with them measures which can help people out of poverty, like the pupil premium, like cutting tax on low pay, like measures to help troubled families? Because there is nothing particularly moral about pouring even more borrowed money into systems which can trap people in poverty and trap them in dependence.
I think my right honourable friend, who's a distinguished churchman himself, talks perfect sense. There is nothing moral about running up huge deficits, about out-of-control welfare bills, and if we don't deal with these problems, the whole country will be poorer. And I think we should listen to the words of George Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, who said this: the churches should beware of the dangers of blithely defending a gargantuan welfare budget that every serious politician would cut as a matter of economic common sense. Well, I think serious politicians have to engage in this, and that should go for everybody.
Ed Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, I join my honourable friend and the Prime Minister in congratulating Team GB on a brilliant performance at the Winter Olympics. As the immediate threat of floods passes, there are still thousands out of their homes, parts of the Somerset levels are still underwater, and hundreds of businesses and farms are still struggling to recover. Now, the Committee on Climate Change, the House of Commons Library and the UK Statistics Authority have all now said that government investment in flood defences has fallen. In the light of this and the events we've seen, does the Prime Minister think it's right to revisit the plans for investment in flood defences?
Well, we will look very carefully at the plans for flood defences, but of course we've set out spending figures all the way out to 2020, not all of which are fully committed, which are major investments in flood defences. But as I said 2 weeks ago, as the waters reside and as the EA and others can look at what happened, we can review and see what new measures might be necessary. But let me just repeat the point that in this 4-year period, and indeed in this Parliament, overall spending on flood defences has gone up.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that the figures the Prime Minister is quoting are phony, and I believe he knows it. This is what the UK Statistics Authority says. I know they don't want to hear it. They say this: government funding for flood defences was lower in both nominal and real terms during the current spending period than during the last. And the only way you claim otherwise is by ignoring inflation and claiming credit for the money that other organisations other than government spend. Why doesn't the Prime Minister admit it? They've cut flood defence spending and he's been caught out.
The fact is, if you take the period 2010, when I became Prime Minister, to 2014, the spending has been £2.4 billion, more than the £2.2 billion in the previous 4 years. If you take the 5-year period of this Parliament, all of which, during which I will be Prime Minister, the spending is higher than the previous 5 years. Those are the facts. But I have to say to him, I think having this debate is slightly pointless. The whole country should be coming together to deal with flood defences. And the fact is, from the moment that he turned up in a
David
flooded
Cameron
village
lying
with
again,
a
as
Labour
always, in the
candidate
YouTube
alongside
viewers. He is
him.
lying
He's
his head
completely
off.
misjudged the
But then
mood of the
again,
country.
David Cameron always lies.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me say to him that if it's a simple choice between the UK Statistics Authority and him, people will believe that the UK Statistics Authority and what is happening. And now, the assessment of how much to invest in flood defence depends significantly on your assessment of the risks posed by man-made climate change. Now, he said in opposition about climate change this: it's easy to do the softer things, like ride your bike, visit glaciers, and rebuild your house to make it green. That was him that said it. But it's only clear you mean it when you do the tough things as well, like telling the truth about climate change. So, Mr. Speaker, what is the truth about climate change?
The truth about climate change is this government has a programme to reduce carbon right across our economy.
Another lie from David
the government
Cameron.
itself.
Something
Compared
like
with
that
the
never
government
will
he
happen.
left in 2010 when he was Climate Change Secretary, the government's own carbon emissions are down 14%. But the point, let me just return to this issue of flood defence spending, because I think the people of this country will want to know this. He is committed to a zero-based spending review. That it means, yes we are, says the Shadow Chancellor, in an unusually helpful intervention. That means a zero-based spending review means they cannot pledge to match the flood spending we're making in 2016, in 2017, in 2018, or all the way to 2020. They have absolutely no guarantee to the people of this country they will take either climate change seriously or flood defences seriously.
What total nonsense that he knows it.
Indeed, Ed, indeed.
It's very interesting because someone who in opposition wanted to talk as much as he could about climate change now is desperate to get off the subject. I asked him a question. Will he just set out for his party and for the country his views about man-made climate change?
I believe man-made climate change is one of the most serious threats that this country and this world faces. And that is why we have the world's first green investment bank here in Britain. That is why, unlike 13 wasted years of Labour, we're building the first nuclear power station for 30 years in our country. That is why we've cut carbon emissions emitted by the government by 14% since we came to office. That is why we've set out year after year carbon budgets in this country. They talk a good game about it, but it actually takes people to come in, govern effectively and deal with it.
Excellent. We're getting somewhere. Well, I agree with what he said about the importance of climate change. But the reason this matters is because there are people in the most important positions in his government going around questioning climate change. This is what the Environment Secretary says, and I quote, "People get very emotional about this. People should just accept the climate's been changing for centuries," and he refuses to be briefed on climate change. And the Energy Minister, when asked about climate change, said this: "You're not going to draw me on that. I haven't had time to get into the climate change debate." He's the Energy Minister, Mr. Speaker. So will the Prime Minister now clarify? Is he happy to have climate change deniers in his government?
This obviously, Mr. Speaker, is the new approach to Prime Minister's questions. You come to the House of Commons and praise the Prime Minister for his commitment to climate change and the environment. I like the new style. I thought about Miss Punch and Judy. I think this is much more refreshing. This government has a solid track record of cutting carbon, of negotiating internationally, of investing in nuclear, the biggest renewable energy programme that we've seen in our country's history. For the first time in a long time, we're on track to meet our renewable targets. Perhaps you'd like to get up again and congratulate me for this excellent record on the environment.
The whole country will have heard he cannot answer the question about whether you need to believe in man-made climate change to be part of his government. He's gone from thinking it was a basic part of his credo to be a matter of individual conscience. It used to be the thing he claimed was his passion above all else. And here's the thing, if we're to properly protect the British...
Order! Order. The questions and the answers will be heard however long it takes, so those who are exercising their vocal cords in a rather excessive way really ought to calm down. There's quite a long way to go. Ed Miliband.
And here's the thing, Mr. Speaker, if we're going to properly protect the British people against the threats they face, we cannot have doubt and confusion in his government on the issue of climate change. Doesn't he need to rediscover the courage of his past convictions and tell his party to get real on climate change?
You can measure the courage of the convictions by the acts in government, the Green Investment Bank, the cuts in carbon, the investment in renewables, the investment in nuclear. He talks a good game, but he actually didn't achieve anything when he was in office. And Mr. Speaker,
It's laughable, but Cameron is a
the most form
fool.
of denial we have today in British politics is the reality deniers of the party opposite. What is their plan for the deficit? Nothing. What is their plan for welfare reform? Nothing. What is their plan for long-term investment? Because that is what climate change requires. Long-term investment like high-speed rail, long-term investment like nuclear power, long-term investment like fixing our economy. That is what this government is doing. All he does is get up and deliver a lot of hot air.